Wendy with us in studio again today, and as I mentioned, our primary focus today is going to be on food labelling regulations, and this is a very, very serious issue for anyone who suffers from allergies. We will share a case study with you which demonstrates why this is something we need to take very, very seriously. And if you are one of those people who suffers from a really serious allergy and has to be mindful of reading labels and has experiences to share with us on where things were not properly labelled and the consequences thereof, I would love for you to join the conversation. So please feel free to engage on the WhatsApp line 072 567 1567. Before we do any of that, firstly, welcome, Wendy. Always great to have you with us.
Hi, Pippa. Good to be here.
And then secondly, just a quick follow-up on last week's show. We had such an interesting engagement with the Automobile Association last week talking about this terrible news of several vehicles that are failing or doing really badly in car safety testing with the version that is being sold in this country. And I received such an interesting email on the back of that conversation last week from Steve. Very, very concerned about what he had heard. He said to me he and his wife had just 3 months ago purchased a new Toyota Corolla Cross, and they were devastated to listen to that interview last week concerning its rather poor local NCAP safety rating. And Steve has actually written to Toyota expressing his concerns and asking what his options are. And among the quotes in that letter he shared with me were the following. He wrote to them to say, as a customer who prioritizes safety and who actively chose Toyota based on its long-standing reputation for reliability and protection, I feel deeply misled. Had I been aware of these material differences in safety specifications between different markets, I might have reconsidered my purchase decision. Was Toyota South Africa aware of the safety discrepancies between the European and local models? And if so, why were customers not informed at the point of sale? What recourse do I have as a consumer, considering the vehicle is only 3 months old and was purchased under reasonable assumptions about its safety? While I understand that South African automotive safety legislation might be less stringent than in Europe, I believe Toyota should uphold the same global standards for customer safety, regardless of geography, especially given its position as a trusted international brand. That's a quote from what he has sent to Toyota, and we haven't heard back from him as to whether he has had a response from Toyota as yet. But Steve is also interested to hear your thoughts, Wendy, from the perspective of the Consumer Protection Act. For somebody who has recently bought a Toyota because they thought it was a very safe vehicle.
So, interesting question, and I completely understand where Steve is coming from. I would feel the same. But Toyota will do what Hyundai did when its its
Grand
i10 scored 0 safety stars for the passengers up front. And let's be clear that the Corolla Cross did a lot better than that, got 2 stars for upfront passengers, which is worlds apart from a 0. So not in the same league at all as the Hyundai result. But still, you don't, below 3 is concerning.
Yeah.
5 being the optimum. And what Toyota will say and has said, and all the other manufacturers who didn't score, well in these global NCAP tests will say, well, this car is completely legal to sell in this country. We passed all the tests. In the case of the Corolla Cross, it was airbag protection for the side of the head, which is really important. Yeah. And but it's not required in this country, whereas it would be required in other markets. So it's a very difficult thing. Plus, 5 months ago, how long ago did Steve say he
3 months ago?
3 months ago, this car might have been tested, but the results certainly wouldn't have been available to Toyota. That probably would have happened around a month ago. If the Hyundai example is anything to go by, they informed Hyundai at the beginning of November, and the results were made public in the first week of December. So what were they required to
disclose? The information wasn't available to them at that point.
I would say, because the Act, and Steve asked specifically about the Act, and I don't have it in front of me, but what it says is, in terms of, it's very big on full disclosure in marketing and selling of products. And it does include the word, to mislead a customer is not only to give them wrong information, but to omit to tell them key information. Mm-hmm. So I would say the dealerships selling these 2 cars in particular, since the results, certainly since they became publicly available, but I would argue Global NCAP can tell us the exact date that the manufacturer, the OEM, the automaker was told of the results. So I would say technically from that date, responsibly, the information should have been made available to people looking to buy the car, because I think there could be a case of mis-selling, especially if the buyer was asking questions about what are the safety features
of the car.
So you could give the safety features, but if you know it had a 0 result, and in Global NCAP, which is highly respected, had never been proved wrong, and never had a successful legal challenge against any of their findings, it is a very material omission to then say, we should just tell you that, because if they did that, who's going to buy the car?
Yeah. So, Dani responding, as I think some will, saying, I'm sorry, if you take safety seriously, as your listener claims, they would read the safety equipment per the model you buy's spec list. Just assuming doesn't point to someone taking something seriously. Toyota hid nothing. It will have been in the spec sheet. So, to your point, a lot depends here on the date of the purchase versus the date at which they received the results. But if I'm understanding you correctly, Wendy, you're saying now that, obviously the public is now aware of it because it's in the public domain. But if somebody is asking questions saying, I'm specifically buying this vehicle because I believe it's safety is a priority for me and I believe it is safe, run me through the safety features. Are you saying that going forward they would need to disclose
I would definitely say so, because that's a very material omission. The information is available and they should share it with the customer.
So that this is the version sold in South Africa. It has these safety features.
Likewise, as consumers looking to buy a car, we have some responsibility to do our homework as well.
To Dani's point, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. People buy cars very quickly, but based largely on emotion, and don't spend enough time, I'm generalizing here, of course, but don't spend enough time doing the deep investigations. We won't even get onto used cars, but even new cars. And you have to be very mindful about the comparisons you're doing, because just to look up NCAP, you might get a result that applies to the car that's sold in Australia. This is not going to apply to the Corolla Cross, because it's only sold in Africa, as far as I'm aware, mainly in Africa, and for reasons of
now we know why.
Yeah, you have to be careful that you're looking for. It has to be a car that's on. If you're going to look for NCAP, it has to have been a car that was bought in South Africa, tested,
shipped over to Germany, tested
for that test.
Yeah,
because it's not going to be the same car necessarily. Probably won't be as one tested in Europe, in Australia, in the US. It's not going to be the same car.
So, Steve, with huge compassion for how concerned you must be, please do keep in touch with us and let us know if you do get a response from Toyota. I would be interested to hear what they say in response to your email and the questions you asked. And anything else you want to add, Wendy?
Yeah, the AA has said that they can't endorse cars, but they're saying if you drive one of these cars that has performed suboptimally in one of these tests, these two cars, ideally, especially in the case of a 0-star rating, you should look to get out of the car. But of course, that's going to happen at your cost, because it's going to be just treated as a normal sale or a normal trade-in without any acceptance of the fact that you're doing so because you're not happy with the safety result. But I would suggest that people who drive one of these two cars, they're not happy, and especially if they've bought them very recently, in the last 6 to 12 months, go to a dealership and see what trade-in they're willing to give you, and let us know, whether it's lower than you were expecting because of this issue.
Because it might be harder for them to resell it now.
I'm
with
pretty
this information
sure.
being out there. Yeah,
pretty sure.
Interesting. Thank you very, very much, Wendy. Appreciate that. All right. With that, we are going to dive into the main topic of conversation for today. I don't want us to I see one or two people starting to respond on the car issue again. I don't want us to get sidetracked into another lengthy conversation. Just to say to those who didn't hear last week's Consumer Talk, a really, really important and very enlightening conversation with the head of the Automobile Association, who was with us in the studio for the whole hour, talking not only to the two specific vehicles whose safety tests have come up suboptimal. I love that term, Wendy. But talking to the bigger issues that raises and the things you need to be asking when buying a car. So please do go and listen to it if you didn't hear last week's show. You'll find it saved on podcast on primemediaplus.com. Then we move on to the main topic of conversation for today, which is also a serious safety concern and one we need to take really seriously. Perhaps not for everyone, but it is an issue that requires all producers of foodstuffs, etc., to take it seriously, because for the people that it does matter to, it can be a matter of life and death, as one or two case studies are going to show today. We're talking about proper labeling of foodstuffs to ensure that potential allergens are declared. And Wendy, as I said, it's easy not to care about this if you don't suffer from allergies, but for those who do, it's really no laughing matter.
Exactly. So, for those people, a single bite of food containing the allergen could be deadly. It's as simple as that. So take the example of British teenager Natasha Ednan Laprousse, excuse my pronunciation, who in 2016 picked up a sandwich, a baguette, at Heathrow Airport before boarding a flight to Nice with her father. She was extremely allergic to sesame, but she didn't expect to find any sesame seeds in what was labelled an artichoke, olive and tapenade baguette. And because it was made fresh on site, by law, they didn't have to have a detailed ingredient list on the label. And that oversight proved fatal, triggering a deadly allergic reaction. Heartbreaking story. She went into shock. She was on the plane. Her father was doing all the EpiPens, but it was such a severe reaction that it didn't help, and it couldn't save her. So the only good news is that the incident actually led to a change in food labelling laws in the UK called Natasha's Law, which came into effect in October 2021. And since then, UK food businesses are required to provide full ingredients list on all what they call pre-packed for direct sale food, clearly highlighting any of the 14 major allergens on their labels.
So, terrible story for Natasha's family, only 16 years old. Fatal consequences to that oversight, but it has led to a change there. We're going to talk today about whether we have had similar changes here in South Africa. I just want to pick up on one thing, though, highlighting any of the 14 major allergens. Wendy, are the 14 major allergens a standard thing worldwide?
No, unfortunately not. So, for example, wild sesame is a major allergen in the UK. It's classed as uncommon. Here we talk about common and uncommon allergens.
Okay.
So it's an uncommon. It's classified as an uncommon allergen in South Africa, and this is something that allergy sufferers need to be acutely aware of when they travel. That what is declared in one country might not necessarily be declared in another. So if you know you have a life-threatening allergy, the onus is very much, it's a huge responsibility on you to ask.
Funnily enough, a sesame allergy popping in on the WhatsApp. Rocky says, I have a life-threatening sesame seed allergy. I've been caught a number of times with sesame oil in salad dressings, restaurants frying steak in the oil, etc. Last time it was a hot cross bun. There was no seed in the bun and no mention of it on the ingredients list, but it had been made on a tray previously used for seeded buns, and they'd stuck to the bottom of the bun.
It seems it's fairly uncommon as allergies go, but it seems to be a very
really bad one if you have it.
Those tiny little seeds, are really deadly to those whose immune system can't cope with them. So.
So we have a local,
yes.
Obviously the most extreme version, I mean, we put that up front, Natasha's case in the UK, because it does demonstrate the potential consequences are not just severe. This is not people complaining and expecting special treatment because they get a bit of a sniffle or an itchy skin.
Yeah.
You can die of an anaphylactic shock reaction if you ingest an allergen. So we used that up front, but now we have a local case study, and it doesn't involve travel. It happened right here in South Africa. Wendy, tell us what happened.
It does, but it also involves sesame seeds. So unlike the late Natasha, Greg Turner of Joburg, same thing. He had a severe allergic reaction to sesame seeds. He bought a ready-made sandwich that seemed innocent enough, ready to eat, ham, cheese, and tomato salmi, in those clear little clamshell things.
Holders,
that clipped together. And he bought it from the Super Spa in Lone Hill, Johannesburg, in December. It was a Sunday, and he put it in the fridge and took it to work the next day. And he did what he always does, took a bite in the corner. He calls it a sample bite. It's just become his habit. And that one bite was enough to see him end up in a clinic being injected with a massive dose of adrenaline.
Sure.
Because unbeknown to him, the staff in that supermarket had substituted hummus for margarine. And, of course, hummus contains tahini, which is a paste made from ground sesame seeds.
Sure. Okay. Why you would substitute hummus for butter is perhaps a conversation for another day. Maybe they'd run out of margarine, couldn't find the replacement,
Maybe
whatever.
the hummus was on its about to reach its best before date, and rather than waste it.
Who knows why? That's a conversation for another day. But let's bring Greg in. Greg Turner, thank you so much for being willing to join us this afternoon to chat about your experience. And I'm really glad that you are okay to do so. I've got one eye on the clock and I can see we are heading towards the news. So what I'm going to suggest we do is just ask Greg to briefly explain what happened to him and then, or maybe to explain his background with this allergy. And then we'll continue the conversation after the Eyewitness News. So Greg, thanks for your time firstly and welcome to CapeTalk.
Thanks so much, Pippa, and to Wendy. Thank you so much for the invite. I'll try and be a little bit brief with my intro, my background.
Sure.
I'm 56 years young. I discovered when I was about 13 or 14 that I had an allergy. Friend's mom, Polish descent, she thought she would give us a treat, and she gave me a halva bar to share with my best mate. And I suddenly discovered that I was battling to breathe. So I rushed home, and Mom had some medicine at hand, and I was able to take the medication. And from there, we knew we were on a different path where my food choices were going to be involved.
And how have you managed that, Greg? I mean, going forward, so you are, I guess we have to say, lucky enough to know what the allergen is that you react to and to be able to take preemptive steps. Do you want to just, before we go to news, explain to us what you do to manage that issue in terms of reading labels, in terms of asking questions in restaurants,
Sure.
etc.?
Yeah, it's very challenging. So restaurants, it's sitting down, calling across the waitron, looking for the manager, explaining to them about sesame seed. Also having realized over time, though, that even pointing out the sesame seed, oftentimes that manager of that restaurant may not actually know what's in some of the ingredients, like the salad dressing.
Yeah.
So I'm very careful. I always read the labels. Labels is critical for me. Back of the products, always really important. And it can be deceptive. You know, my wife has given me a piece of diet chocolate before. I ended up in a clinic.
Yeah.
My mom gave me some mixed herbs and spices on a pizza. I ended up in a clinic. You know, the list goes on. It's very, very difficult living with it. It's a day-by-day challenge for allergy sufferers.
And Greg, tell me, when you travel, do you travel with EpiPens with you and that sort of thing, or how do you manage it when you're away from home?
So I have to travel with EpiPen. It's EpiPen. Fortunately, one is able to apply oneself if you're still in the condition that you're able to apply it yourself. If not, you've got to then obviously get the people that you're traveling with in that group. If it's family, my wife knows how to apply it. But if I'm traveling with a work group, I then got to find somebody within the work group who would be able to step in and apply it.
So
Something else that's rather interesting is you need to have more than one pen, not just one pen. One pen may allay it or put it off for a short period of time, but you may require a second or a third pen if it's going to be life or death threatening.
Yeah, I think Natasha had two on her, but
it just was not enough. Greg, thank you, and please stay with us on the line as we take a short break for the Eyewitness News. Really important, I think, just to set the scene there. And firstly, I did that very deliberately because it's important to note Greg has been incredibly careful. As Wendy said, he does a little test nibble when he's eating a new product for the first time. He is super aware of the risk and manages that risk as best as he is able to in the circumstances within his control. We'll talk after the news about what went wrong in this case and what he has learned subsequently. Greg Turner started chatting to us just before the break, explaining to us how he's known since his early teens that he has a severe allergic reaction to sesame seeds, and he has been really, really consistent and careful throughout his life about managing that risk and reading food labels and asking questions in restaurants, etc., traveling with EpiPens. It is something that he manages to the very, very best of his ability and really tries to control all of the things that he can control. But it's the uncontrollable we're talking about today. And fairly recently, Greg purchased a ready-made sandwich from a spa in Johannesburg. It was labelled as a ham, cheese and tomato sami, and when he took one little nibble off the corner, which is his habit when eating something new, straight away knew something is wrong. There is sesame in this product. It turns out the sandwich had been buttered, for lack of a better word, with hummus instead of margarine or butter. And of course, hummus contains tahini paste, which is sesame seed paste. So Greg ended up in a clinic having massive doses of adrenaline to get him through that. And Greg, again, thanks for holding, and glad that you are okay and lived to tell the tale with us. Tell us now, okay, so you had an instant reaction. You were obviously quick enough to recognize what was happening, that you were able to seek medical help immediately. Just chat to us a little bit about what happened that day.
Thanks, I will do. It's actually interesting because the first thing I did was message my wife and said to her, guess what, that sandwich, unfortunately, I'm having a reaction to it. Yeah. Second thing I said to her was, we need to get on the SPA and talk about their labeling.
Yeah.
I then said to her, I'm going to manage it. Hopefully, things will go smoothly. And if necessary, I'll contact her again with further updates. As it turned out, I got to a point where I realized I had taken an allergex with me. Yeah. And I had that allergex, and it seemed to slow it down. I didn't have the EpiPen with me in the office. It was in the car, and I thought, let me try the allergex first, and then see where we get to. Mm-hmm. From there, it seemed to clear, as in the throat wasn't swelling up anymore, and I thought, okay, I can continue. I was on a call with suppliers in New Zealand, but about halfway through the call, I realized, no, this is actually not going the right way. So I thought, let me actually go. I'm actually going to get myself straight to a clinic. So I got in the car, shot through to the clinic, and said, I'm going to need you guys to help me out here. So immediately put me on to test the blood pressure, checked the blood oxygen saturation levels. Doctor came through, asked the same questions that the sister had asked me, and then said to me, okay, we're going to put you on to cortisone, we're going to put you on to antihistamines, and then she said, I would normally put this through intravenously, the epinephrine, which is the antihistamine. In this case, because of the way your blood pressure is dropping and your SATs are out, I can't take that chance.
Sure.
I have two choices. One is I can try and inject into your muscle, and hope we get enough that'll get to your heart in time. Or rather, what we're going to do is we're actually going to inject it directly into the drip line, which she did. Sure. Now I've never had this before. Directly as bad as this. So she put it straight into the drip line, and I thought at that point, this was it. I'm now about to go meet my maker.
Sure.
It was so serious. So going through my mind is, in terms of obviously losing my family and not saying goodbye and so on, but also like this was so senseless. This should never have happened. And, what could I have done differently? And the reality is, at a point when we bought that sandwich, we did everything we knew correctly what to do, which was buy the sandwich, check the labels. There wasn't any labels, but it's a ham, cheese, and tomato sandwich. Yeah. How far wrong can you go with a ham, cheese, and a tomato sandwich? Well, I've certainly learned the lesson that day.
Okay, so Greg, again, thank heavens you were able to get to help on time, and that the help could take effect in time to save your life. And a story everybody can learn from. And one hopes listening to this, every person involved in any kind of food manufacturing, hospitality, etc., recognizes how seriously this issue has to be taken. You did say that one of your first thoughts, Greg, when you spoke to your wife was we need to engage with SPA. You then subsequently did that. Tell us a little bit about what that engagement has looked like and what feedback they've given you.
Yeah, so while I was at the clinic being treated and so, my wife needed to try and find out what it was, because it was a bit of an unknown at that stage, what it actually was that had triggered it.
Yeah.
So she contacted the actual branch in question. She managed to get through to the right person in the sort of the food and beverage section, and found out from them that, as far as they could tell, it was a ham, cheese, and tomato sandwich made from regular ham, regular cheese, and regular tomato, and some bread. And Nancy said, well, the bread, Greg is saying, and we saw it in the packaging, it wasn't seeded bread, so it can't be in the bread. Yeah. There's got to be something else. And they said, no, that's it. And they said, well, hang on. We normally use margarine, but there's a chance we could have used hummus, but it can't be that. And Nancy said, whoa, hang on.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Hummus is exactly it. That's exactly what it is. You know what hummus is. Oh, yes, okay. Maybe it was
goodness. That. Maybe it was that.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Your body knew definitely.
Yeah. Rocky made the mention on the earlier WhatsApp that he sent to you. What's really important for us as allergy sufferers, the sesame seed in its little kernel or shell, we can generally sort of digest that. It goes through the digestive system, and the proteins inside of it doesn't affect us. But when they turn that into a paste as a manufacturer or a food supplier, that paste instantaneously is made from the proteins, and that protein sets us off horribly. And that was my massive reaction. was this huge hummus paste that had been put onto the sandwich.
Even just one bite. That's the scary part.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that speaks directly to Dave's question from Plumstead, because Dave was asking, surely you can see sesame seeds, but Dave, to Greg's point, you can't if they've been processed, turned into a paste, or oil derived from them, and sesame oil used in a salad dressing. It's not literally the seeds themselves that are always the cause. It's often a processed form thereof that is the invisible cause. So I'm glad you asked the question and that Greg was able to answer it. Wendy, over to you.
Okay, so do you want to, Greg, do you want to say where you got with SPAR, or shall I start with I obviously took up the case as a formal media query. Should we start with that?
Yeah, I think you run with that. You've been doing a sterling job so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mpudi Mabane, who's the National PR Comms and Sponsorship Manager for the SPAR Group, I took up the case, exactly what we've discussed here, and I asked some questions around the protocols of disclosing allergens. And she said, SPAR maintains rigorous food safety, allergen management, and regulatory compliance requirements for all independently owned stores operating under the store brand. So they have a particular challenge, SPAR, unlike the other supermarket brands, in that they are individually owned and run. So under the SPAR umbrella, obviously they have their agreements, but
they're franchise stores.
They pretty much own their own. Yeah, they're franchise stores. So in this incident, Mpudi said that an ingredient was added to the product that was not reflected on the ingredients list. Regardless, this is unacceptable both from a food safety perspective and in terms of providing customers with a clear and accurate information about the products they purchase. Following this incident, immediate instruction was issued to the store that staff may not substitute or add ingredients to the ready-to-eat products unless this is accurately and clearly reflected on the product labeling. In addition, the following actions were implemented at store level. The product name and in-store recipe were updated to reflect hummus as an ingredient. Preparation protocols were reinforced to prevent unauthorized ingredient substitutions. All home meal replacements, that's what they call them, HMR. Production staff completed refresher allergen and food safety training, with ongoing training scheduled. Corrective disciplinary action was taken with the HMR department manager to prevent future incidents. All allergen notices and disclaimers were reviewed and updated, with additional seed allergen signage placed in store. SPAR's regional operations, retail operations team conducted a full review at the store, engaged directly with the customer and the store owner, and confirmed that the corrective measures have been implemented. Now this is where it gets interesting. In line with South African food labelling regulations, everyone in the industry just knows them as R146, SPAR ensures that allergen and ingredient information for food prepared in store is maintained, these are the key words, maintained and made available at the point of sale. Because here's the thing, when it comes to this ready-to-eat food, rather than a packaged product sitting on the shelf, they don't have to put the full ingredients list there. All they have to do is make it available to customers.
If they ask for it.
If they ask for it, or have signage up. But as Greg will no doubt go on to say, the sign can be some distance away from where you're picking up that sandwich.
But and I'm just going to make the point here that this applies not just to SPAR, it's throughout the industry. If you go into Woolies and buy a chicken pie, the label says chicken pie and the price and maybe the grammage.
Yeah.
There's nothing on that label that you've bought at the deli
grey area
that says there's flour in the pastry or butter or dairy in the sauce, for example.
Yeah.
It just says chicken pie.
So to that, SPAR said it's taken an additional step of updating sandwich scale labels at Super SPAR Sunninghill. One hopes everywhere else as well, but to include key ingredients in the product name, providing clearer information to customers at the point of purchase. So, yeah, that's key. We'll hear from Greg in a moment as to whether that sandwich whether they've dropped the hummus or whether it's now saying
cheese, ham, tomato, and hummus sandwich.
Yes.
Yeah.
So regular listeners to the show will know that we often quote Harris Steinman and his team at FACTS, based in Stellenbosch. That stands for Food and Allergy Consulting and Testing Services. And Gabby Stevens of FACTS explained to us the relevant food regulations around allergens in particular. So in terms of that R146, a common allergen includes egg, cow's milk, crustaceans, mollusks, fish, peanuts, soybeans, tree nuts, and any significant cereals, as well as ingredients derived from all those foodstuffs. If it has retained its allergenicity,
There's a word I hadn't heard before.
me neither,
Okay.
in the final product. And then an uncommon allergen it would include sesame along with celery, sulfites, lupin, and mustard. Whereas in the UK, those what our law classifies as an uncommon, those sesame, celery, sulfite, they are common, or as they call them, major. So they have they
have to disclose those as well. Okay, so this is very interesting. And again, just to emphasize that this is not a spa-specific thing. There's an exclusion in South Africa, Wendy. That's important.
Okay, so it goes like this. Any ready-to-eat foodstuff prepared and sold on the premises of a catering establishment for consumption, except for information on the list of ingredients, including allergens, must be available at the point of sale upon request. So they don't have to be on the label.
They don't have to
the
be on the label?
The allergens don't have to be on the label, but they have to keep a list of them. So
if you walk into the store and say, please tell me what is in this sandwich, somebody behind the counter needs to be trained to be able to say, this is the list of ingredients.
Yes, have the full list, yes.
But they don't have to print them on the label if it is made on site fresh in store or brought in fresh. So again, just to emphasize here, so this is different from a ready-made product that you're selling out of the freezer of a ready-made meal, for example, at Checkers, let's say. If you look on the back of that box, you're going to see an ingredients list.
It's not prepared in the store.
It's not prepared in the store, but fresh in the store, if you're buying from their deli counter, there's no labeling about the ingredients.
No.
So
it doesn't have to have, they have to have it available, but it doesn't have to be on each pack of food. So I think that's quite scary for an allergen sufferer. Yeah. Because you then have to get into the habit of
asking for it, not.
But again, with the car safety standards, I mean, you shouldn't stick to the basic. What's the minimum requirement? I don't think, in the interest of customer service, if there is a way to declare allergens, whether it's common or uncommon, I don't know. Wouldn't you want to err on the side of caution?
Of caution, and oversupply of information. Yeah,
oversupply. I know they'll say labels are small, but they always find space when it's a marketing thing. Yeah. Somehow.
So why not find space for this? So let's just bring Greg back in here, because Greg, I know you've not left this issue. You have been checking quite diligently what is going on in the different spa supermarkets in your part of the world, and you've observed that so some changes have been made in the store where your incident arose from, if I can put it that way, that clumsily. But what else did you find in your sort of research, searching through other branches?
So the challenge that I have is, if we're going to place the full reliance on this warning sign, the warning sign needs to be present and on that relevant, ready-to-go fridge, or that counter where the that particular foodstuff is, that has not been fully labelled, because you need to ask at the counter for the ingredients. When I went into the spa in question is Sunninghill Spa. When I went into Sunninghill on Sunday again, I've been frequenting them quite a bit now. My family and I have supported the spa over 10, 15 years, a long time. So I'm always there, and I was there again on Sunday wearing my sort of detective's hat, because I'm on a bit of a mission now. But this has got to be right, and I almost died, and I can't bear to think that somebody else could be exposed to something that could really impact their life. So when I see the sign, and the sign is there, and actually I went through early January, and when I went in early January, my wife and I had a look, and there was two signs, in fact, one on top of the fridge and one next to the fridge. So that's great. We can tick the boxes there. I then went to the actual sandwiches, and on the sandwich that I would have bought in December now says ham, cheese, and tomato, LOGI in this case, which is probably low GI for the bread, and then it says in open bracket HUMU.
That's not enough.
And that's where it stops. and that's where it stops. So I'm assuming humu is actually supposed to be hummus, okay? But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's containing hummus or not. It could be anything. It could be a typo, okay?
Does sound like a typo.
Even worse, and this is why I'm advocating that we have to do labeling. Labeling matters, okay? Is next to that sandwich or on the same shelf as that sandwich, I picked up a cheese and tomato sandwich. And in fact, we bought that sandwich. And my wife said to me, she said, Greg, I'm telling you, this one is not labeled with hummus, but I can almost guarantee you it's got hummus in it. And I said, how can that be? You know, it's kind of thinking, I want to trust the store. I really do. That had the warning. You know, my life-threatening episode was a warning. Sure, they're going to heed the warning. We took it, we paid for it, and we opened it up with the manager there. And we opened up outside the store, went back to the manager and said, here we go. There's the hummus again. And then you guys have put a warning, 2 warning signs up, and there's hummus on it again. Once again, if I'd eaten this sandwich, this time I would have died, you know, most likely, because of the severity of the previous time that I had the episode. So it's not just about let's make it available at the counter. I then also, to your point, I visited 3 or 4 of the branches and actually asked at the counter, please, can I have a copy? And not one's been able to provide me with that diesel copy. So for me, labeling matters. If you can put it into the ingredients, and you put a list of ingredients on the actual label, and you can put the allergen, the common one, and if you even the uncommon one, that would be even better still for an allergy sufferer. You know, and 2 of the branches I did visit this Sunday, they were totally on board. They said we've already ordered the labels will be labeled accordingly. We're going to put more information on it than is required, because actually my daughter suffers from anaphylactic shock, and the other manager says he suffers from anaphylactic shock as well. He says, Greg, I'm going to do that. I've already done it for my bread, for my milk, my meats, and I'm now going to be doing it for my ready-to-eat foodstuffs as well.
Sure. It seems, you know, they, like most things, if you have somebody in your family who's in a wheelchair or disabled in some way, you're just more attuned to those issues. And so if you've come across somebody who works in that retail space and they or a loved one has an allergy, they will tend to be a lot more sensitive to the issue and understand the severity of mislabeling or lack of labeling. Yeah. So I went back to Spa with Greg's additional comments based on his store visits, etc., and said, could you comment on these? And I was told, given the volume of information provided by Mr. Turner, which involves details from multiple independently owned stores, the matter has been referred to the relevant internal departments for review and further investigation. As a result, SPA is not in a position to provide a substantive response at this stage. Once the necessary feedback has been received and the review completed, SPA will revert with an update. And I will make sure that happens and we can reflect it here. But I think it's also important to say that this is not ever, I doubt it's going to be a solely SPA issue, even though they would be more susceptible to it because of the individual ownership model that they have. Yeah. But I think, just as luckily we're not going to have a Greg's law because Greg's still with us, but we really don't want to have that kind of incident as with Natasha to sort of force some more sensitivity and more requirements around labeling of these allergen issues.
Yeah. Greg, thank you for not just for raising the flag on this one, but for being so diligent in the investigation that you've done and not letting it go. We really appreciate the legwork you've done in preparation for this conversation, and more importantly, just glad that you are okay and with us today to share the tale. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time as well.
Thanks, Greg Turner. Keep well, please. Thank you, Anne. My example of the Woolies chicken pie was apparently a bad one, because Anne has just messaged me to say, I have just bought an individual chicken pie from Woolworths at the hot food counter, and the label does have an extensive ingredient list, including the wheat in the pastry.
Oh, well,
so that's good.
Well done, Woolies.
Well done, Woolies. That's good to hear.
Maybe I should do some research here in Cape Town.
And Paul also writing in just quickly to say, I have food allergies. When I buy from Woolies hot food section, they are happy to print the ingredient list for me.
That's law.
Yeah, okay. So I'm glad to hear that they are obliging. 1 or 2 people making the comment that they think it is too much to put the burden of this on the stores, that if you know you are that allergic, it should be your responsibility. You should be eating at home, not buying takeout Why are you putting the responsibility of your life onto somebody else? Asks Amy. And Juno making a similar comment. Why buy outside the home? Just a thought. Would you like to respond?
I think that's quite prejudicial to people who have an allergy. I think, for example, if it definitely needs to be training, because if Greg had said, if you got anything, well, why would he think it anyway? But if he said, if you got anything sesame containing in this thing, they probably would have said no, not realizing that hummus has sesame in it. So I think it does need some responsibility taking on both sides.
Absolutely. And I mean, to the point, the person offering it to him might have genuinely said, no, the ingredients list for our ham, cheese and tomato sandwich has margarine, bread, ham, cheese, tomato, not knowing that a colleague elsewhere in the kitchen had substituted.
And they told him that even after he'd had the incident. So to that point, exactly. So
okay.
I think that's a bit harsh.
I think Greg has done us all a service by raising awareness of this issue and the plea for greater transparency in labelling and on widening the tent under which it falls. So, I'm trying to find the right phrase to use here, Wendy, and I know that the time is running away from us, but I think it's an essential issue, and I do not think it is too much to ask that if you are buying food in a store, the food should be able to clearly and honestly disclose all of the ingredients in that food stuff. I don't think that is asking too much. I don't find it ludicrous at all, Amy. I disagree with you, I'm afraid, on that one. But thank you for joining the conversation. We have to wrap there. Wendy Knowler, as always, thank you so much.